Good morning. Uh, Nice to be back in the land of the living. Well, no, I didn't die. I didn't get ill. I went on holiday. Um, Guys, I hope you're all well. I hope you're enjoying the summer and the heat. What we can enjoy with the heat, anyway. It's. I've just come back from holiday and it was really tough. It was really hot. And I've come back and it's quite really hot here. So I hope you're all well. Nice to be back. I wanted to talk about social selling and is it the future? And I've got some really good points I want to make. And please say hello, by the way, in the chat. There's nothing worse than going live and nobody showing up and nobody talking. So say hello. Don't be rude. Is social selling the future? Does it work? How does it work? I kind of want to just give you some thoughts first thing in the morning, bright and early, 7:30 in the morning. I kind of enjoy doing these things early morning. So say hello. Right. Social selling, is it the future? Right. We all know, and I'm going to define social selling. We all know that the world has changed in terms of how we use phones. Morning, Justin. Morning, Shahin. I can't see one LinkedIn user there. Quintin. The way we sell, the way we market has changed. Yeah. Social media's put a bit of a mix in there, and it's changed the way we do business. Now, what people have done with social media is gone, oh, how do I sell on social media and take some of the very older principles and put them on social media? But they don't really work. Or at least the success of them is really poor. And then there's other people who go, I want to do it my way on social media. So there's people who bring, say, cold calling to social media. There's people who go, actually, I want to use social media my way, and that it's my way or the highway. And there's all these people bringing their agenda to a social platform to say, this is how I want to sell and I want to use this medium. And that's just like nuts, really, in one sense, because it's like, morning, Mike. Morning, Rakesh. It's like basically what you're doing is saying, I want to bake a cake that tastes of chocolate, but I don't want to put chocolate in it. Or I'm going to tell my doctor what course of prescription and medication I'm going to have to treat my ailment. The reality is, social media is not a phone call. Social media is not an email. Social media is not a post. Social media is not a television channel. It is its own unique channel. Morning, Diana from Italy. It's its own unique channel. That means you can either go, I'm going to use it the way I want to use it, or I can use it the way that's most effective. And this is where hopefully you get me and I'm not losing you here. If you go to a television commercial, you have to do a television commercial in a particular way to be successful. There's a format, there's a proven method, there's a proven process. You do it that way. If you want to be successful in cold calling, there is a format, there is a formula, there is a method, there is a skill set that to achieve the result in that way. One of the reasons why people struggle with social media is because they bring their format to a channel and try and do it their way. And it just doesn't work. But social selling, what is it? It's selling through a social channel in a way that works for the platform. So the platform creates its own behavior. The platform creates its own way of working. And you have to sell within the way it works. So if I look at, say, what some people are doing on LinkedIn, and I look at the way people are outreaching, a lot of what's going on is very transactional. So, like, hey, do you need this? Or we do this. Can I tell you more about it? Or we're amazing at this. Can I book a call with you? That's typically what people are doing. Very transactional, very kind of cut to the chase. But it's a bit like social media is a bit like that networking event. You go and all of the great people are in the room. They're all around you, looking round, and you walk up to them and go, "Hey, nice to meet you. Great to be here. I'm so glad we've met because I really want to sell something to you." That's not what you would do in that environment. You wouldn't do it. In a social gathering, let's be honest, what you would do is you would chit chat about the weather, about the world, about politics, about whatever's going on in the world, to build some relationship, to book that conversation and get that conversation offline. That's really what you would do in a physical environment. Now, let me ask you, is social media more like the physical environment or more like a cold call? Well, actually, it's more like a physical environment. It's a social location. People, good morning, Stephen. People come onto social media, they're not coming to buy stuff, right? So even if you've got the perfect product, the perfect service, they are not thinking, the vast majority, 97%, are not even thinking about what you're selling. So people say, well, I just want MQLs and I just want SQLs from sales qualified leads or marketing qualified leads. Unless you get them to download something from LinkedIn, like from a post or something, DMs are not the place to get MQLs and SQLs. Why? Because a vast majority of people have been trained to ignore those messages anyway. So you eliminate a lot of people. It's only really on a call where you can get a decent lead. It's only on a call where you can really pull in a decent lead. Hi, Heather. Yeah, it's wonderful to be back. And it wasn't so much of a shock when I got off the plane to the temperature, because it was something like 20, 23 degrees and I'd come from 32. So it was like, oh, this isn't too bad. So sorry, got to sidetrack them. You can't generate, unless they download something, sign up for your email list or something like that, they're not going to become qualified leads until you get them on a call. So don't try and qualify people on LinkedIn. Don't try unless you're doing downloads. If you're trying to do DMs, you can't qualify whether somebody's relevant. Or you can qualify if they're the relevant decision maker or they have a propensity, but you have no idea of their need or challenge there and then. So the key is to get them to the call. And that's about investing time in building a relationship. There's only really two ways to get somebody on a call. They're either really curious with what you've said in your message and you've perked their interest, or you've established some kind of rapport or relationship that will get you onto a call without talking shop in the message. I've had more success closing business not talking about business in chit chat, building some rapport on LinkedIn, and then asking for a call and saying, look, I'd love to talk to you about this. I've had more success from doing that than firing out the same message over and over and over again. So social selling, and it is the future. And I'll tell you why it is the future. The automation has a lot of benefits. There's no denying it, right? But the problem with automation is it can only do things that can be easily repeated. So a lot of your customers will be in similar boats, but you can't tailor a message to that person when you see a particular quirk of their personality. So if I see two decision makers, let's say I was targeting banks, and I saw two chief risk officers on LinkedIn, I could send them both the same message and exactly the same message. And the might pay off. But the more people I send the same message to, the more I miss the mark. But if I was engaging with that person and I saw actually they've been there for a couple of years and that person's been there 15 years, I've got the opportunity to tailor the conversation. I can make little quips about, you've been in the banking sector for 15 years. Any sign of an escape yet? I can have little bits of quips and banter with them about things that's going on that's more relevant to them, where I show people I've taken the time to understand them. I've taken the time to learn about their business. When you send a template message, you have to accept that the more people you send it to, the more generic it's going to be. Like if I found 15 chief risk officers and sent the same message about chief risk officers, I can probably get a decent response on that because it's 15 people. I can target it a bit more. It's more focused. Right. But when I start sending it to CEOs and founders, their businesses are really difficult. Andrew, absolutely. Tailored voice notes are really important. If you're just sending the same message to loads of people, we can smell it. We can sense it. We can feel it. We know when that message comes through, you've sent that to loads of people. Why? Because it reads that way. Doesn't matter how many times you kind of customize it. It's like really difficult to make something sound like you've made it for them when you're sending it to many. And we can smell it. We can sense it. We can see it. And what in the back of the head, it says, this was not for me. This was not for me. This was for anybody. Now, on email, you can kind of get away with that a little bit more. But I'm a huge proponent of using social to be social. Because if I can unlock a relationship, and let's think about the old world here. We talk old school here. It used to be, I don't have one, but people used to get hired for their little black book. Yeah. Who's in your Rolodex? Who's in your contact list that you can draw on? And what a lot of people have, and I'm guilty of this as well, because I don't know all my connections, is we have connections, but we don't have any connection. We have connections without any connection. And some of the times I see people sending me messages saying, hey, I love to get to know my connections, but then ruin it by saying at the end, I'd love to show you what we do and learn about more about your challenges, which is basically, hey, I'm going to say that I think it's important to know your connections, but really I'm just using it as a sales tool. Well, we all are, but actually we can just get to know people. The reason being is sometimes it's not actually that person who gives you the business. Having your social Rolodex, your social black book, is not about having a list of connections you can talk to. It's about having a list of connections that will respond to you, that will refer you, that will engage with you. Now, that's tricky the more connections you have, but you can make an effort to get to know people on an ongoing basis consistently. So I would go, yes, personalize every message. Every message needs to be relevant and tell a story. I absolutely agree. And your content can do some of that, but the reality is what you've really got to do is invest in unlocking those connections into real relationships, because you don't need, I used to get really, I'm probably going to show my classistness here. Classist. I don't know whether that's a word, but so I'm from a very working class background. So I didn't go to private school, didn't have all the kind of family social connections. And some people I ended up around, I found it incredibly annoying. And I'll tell you why I found it incredibly annoying. I've kind of stepped back from this now because I realized the potential. When you go to certain private schools in this country, yeah, the education you get, obviously, it's expensive, and you go to certain private schools and you find, I've come across some of the dumbest people ever who've gone to I'm not criticizing everybody goes to private schools dumb. I'm not saying that at all. But I've met some people who've been to private school and had like £36,000 a year and £50,000 a year education. They come out and they are some of the dumbest people you will ever meet. Not all of them, so don't take this the wrong way. I'm just telling you what what I've seen. And here's me coming from working class background, working hard, doing all this stuff and going, how is it you can walk into jobs and pick up the phone to people and get people to invest in your startup with very little due diligence, get people to do all of this stuff, and get into cushy jobs where they pay you six-figure salaries, where it's quite clear you probably don't know what you're doing. And I've seen this, and I've got a point to make, and it's not just to attack rich people. That's not what I'm doing. And I used to get really pissed off and angry about this, of how come those people can get into places and earn money when they seemingly don't have all the right credentials. But they do have the right credentials because they have a network of people who will answer the phone to them, will talk to them, and like, know, and trust them. Now, let me spin this round and going, here's me going, oh, I'm working hard. I've got all of this stuff. I'm putting the effort in, but I hadn't built the network that they'd got. One of the best things about private school is not the education, actually. It's who you go to private school with, who you've spent those formative years with. LinkedIn is a social environment. You get the chance to rub shoulders with people, get them to get to know you, and vice versa. And you can choose to see those connection numbers as a commodity of people you can pitch, or you can choose to use them as a network to develop. Now, in the short term, if you pitch people, you're going to get business, of course. But if you develop a depth in that network, that will bring you more money in the long run, massively more money in the long run. So there is this kind of balanced trade-off of, I've got to do a bit of this stuff to bring the money in whilst I build up this deep network. And, some of the people I've talked to, I've had conversations with senior people in big organizations about all sorts of stuff, nothing to do with business. But if I drop them a message now on LinkedIn and say, I've spotted what you guys are up to, can I just get 5 minutes with you? They'll say yes. Why? Because I've put the effort in to develop not just a connection number, not just be connected to the right people, but actually develop those relationships deeper. Now, that's really tough, the more people you connect with, but what you can do is systematically work through it. So if you're connecting with people, you should be trying to deepen those relationships, and not in a very shallow, transparent way of, oh, actually, I'm just literally doing this to sell to you. You're actually doing it because that person, and I've had this, people come, I've had somebody come in, swoop in and buy stuff from us because they have had a recommendation from somebody I've not done business with, but they've got to know me and they've swooped in on their recommendation and bought from me. That comes about building the depth of the social selling, the social element, having a big but deep network. I don't mean knowing everybody and going playing golf or every single connection, but what I'm saying is do more than just, I'm connected with you and eventually I'm going to get round to pitch you. It's about do more with them. The selling piece is far more relational than anything else you would do on any other channel. The social selling, the closest thing to social selling is a networking event. I don't think social selling is anything like email outreach. I don't think it's anything like cold calling. I think it's actually more like talking to people in rooms. The difficulty is, or the challenge is, our only frame of reference to compare social selling is email. And that's wrong. Social selling and email are not the same thing. But that's the closest in terms of the technical element. But in terms of how the dynamic works, it's more like a room of people. And that's the weird bit. When you get to DMs, you need to think like this is a room of people. Jason, I'm back. We'll catch up now. So I wanted to kind of just like throw this out there and go, what is the future of social selling? It's massive. It's huge. I'm seeing already LinkedIn doing more and more to combat and stop people doing these automated messages that are generic. There's a lot of things automation can be good at: calendar reminders, follow-ups, things like that you need to do, taking notes. There's loads of things that automation can do that are beneficial. But sending template messages to people, Alexander, I love that. LinkedIn is the biggest conference in the world and it's free to join. Yeah, absolutely. And there's people behind every profile. And the deeper you go, actually, the less about business it is, and it's more about a human connection. And I know a lot of people say business is business. It's not about personalities. Well, it is. It is. Because if somebody doesn't like you, if somebody doesn't get to know you, you have no advantage in the selling environment. You have no advantage. People buy into people, then they buy into the companies, and then they buy into the products and services. It's people are ambassadors, first of all. And we got to get this, guys. If you get this, it will really change the way you approach things. You'll go deeper with people. You'll get more meaningful relationships with people, and you'll unlock more business in the long run. Now, in the short term, you've got to generate leads. That's why I do some of the programs I do on getting leads from downloads on LinkedIn and from content, because they're people who are saying, I'm interested. I'm a little bit hungry already. But trying to hunt in messages for people ends up copy and paste, volume, email like, and you don't have any depth of connection. Take a long look and go, how many of my connections would even know who I am and what I'm about? How many would have an opinion of me? How many would have a positive opinion of me? How many would even have a negative opinion of me? Now, the good news is if you've been very aggressive on the messaging, the vast majority of people will forget about it over time. You get forgotten really quickly on social media. Social media is so much in our short-term memory, it's unreal. But people will forget you pretty quick. And that's why it's important to have a depth of relationship. If you, and this is true, we've tracked this stat, and then I'm going to shut up and leave you alone. If you've had a direct message conversation with somebody today, and you have that conversation today, in about a week's time, they will not even remember that conversation. One of the other things to realize about social media is as well, often what happens is people don't ignore your message. They choose to open it and go, oh, I'll look at that later, and then never come back to it. That's the way social media work. It's all in our short-term memory. And so going deeper with your relationships with the people who are relevant to you, of course, if you've built a network with randoms, I don't know what you've been doing. If you've got a network full of people who are potential customers, go deep with some people. If somebody's worth 10, 15, 20, 100, 200 grand to you, it's worth building the relationship. Even if it goes nowhere right now, they'll change jobs, they'll move somewhere, they'll recommend you. It's worth it. But when I see people trying to sell 50 grand stuff by pitching people, it's like, what are you doing? This is not email. This is not a cold call. It's you talking to a human being, and you say stuff you would never say in person. It's weird. It's really weird. You know, I say to people all the time, I did it last night in a training session. I said, your LinkedIn outreach messages should look more like WhatsApp messages than email messages. If your outreach looks like emails, you're doing it wrong. You're really doing it wrong. And if you look at some of the guys who promote, cold outreach on email, they tell you actually emails that are shorter are better. The shorter emails do better. What do you want from a message? You want a response. So why are you putting shit tons of information in there, hoping you'll plead and convince people and mention Amazon and amazing companies to convince? It's like, what? People just want, if people know you, if people like you, if you've had some interactions with people, they're going to talk to you. Even if you call them up, if you've had some interactions, they're going to talk to you. That's how it works. Relationships are the key here. Yeah. Even now, relationships are the key. People have to be connected, but you have to have a connection. And without the connection, those are just contacts. They're just a telephone directory. Yeah. And all you're doing is running through the telephone directory trying to find somebody to buy. You either do that or you turn your LinkedIn connections into a black book. And I'll tell you, if you turn it into a black book, it's far more lucrative than it is just using it as a telephone directory. So think about this. Are you building a LinkedIn as a black book, or are you building a telephone directory? Are you gathering connections to pitch, or are you making connections? Because when you make the connections, you can unlock a lot of relationships. It's like that private school analogy. You're in the right room with the right people who you get on with, and they will be, I hate saying it's a really cheesy saying, your net worth is your network. Well, your LinkedIn network, you can either have a bunch of people who have no idea who you are, or you can have a bunch of people who actually remember you, get to know you through content, through outreach, through building relationships. You can choose. I'll tell you which one. I've been doing this for a long time now, and I'll tell you, when I started, I was on my own as a solopreneur. There's now 49 people working in this company, and we've built it all from building our network on LinkedIn. Anyway, I'm going to shut up and say have a great day. Thank you for everybody who's commented. Really appreciate it. For those of you who are just waking up, I love doing these lives early in the morning. It's a bit strange, I know. And if we're not connected, or we're not following each other, drop me a message, say hello. Don't sales pitch me, but if you talk to me, I'll talk back. That's how I work. And yeah, let's get to know each other. Anyway, I've got to go. Work to do, and you've got to get ready for work as well. Aaron, totally agree with you. Social selling is far too surface level, part of a strategy, not the whole strategy. Well, sort of. It can be the full-blown strategy, but I would argue most of the business that the doors you open on social media are closed somewhere else. The doors you open on social media, you step through somewhere else. So is it the whole sales piece? No. But can it be a huge chunk of the sales piece? Absolutely, yes. I'm on LinkedIn full time. I'm on other channels as well. But I'm doing 500-600K a year comfortably from my own LinkedIn profile. And I don't do any aggressive sales pitches. I use content and I build relationships. It's probably more than that, actually, because if you count the recurring business, it's probably more. But yes. Yes, I agree. Rachel agrees with you, Alexander, as well. It's the biggest conference in the world. You've got the platform where people are sharing stuff, content, where you can step on the platform and do the content. But you've also got the networking sessions, who you're sat next to, and all that stuff to build those relationships. All right, I'm going to run. Have a great day, everybody. If we're not connected, come find me. Please keep chatting about this. If you found this interesting, tell me why in the comments. Drop me a line.